Many know the name Moria, and they speak it with dread. They remember darkness, broken halls, orcs in the deep places, and the shadow that waited beneath the stone. They remember the bridge of Khazad-dûm, the fall into fire and abyss, and the silence of a kingdom long abandoned. But Moria was not always a place of fear. Before it was called the Black Pit, before its gates were shut against the world, before goblins crept through its halls and terror woke beneath the mountain, it had another name, older and nobler. Khazad-dûm, the mansion of the Dwarves. I am Gimli, son of Gloin, of the house of Durin, and I tell you this not as a stranger to sorrow, but as one whose people have carried its memory through long ages. To others, Khazad-dûm may be ruin. To us, it is inheritance. It was the greatest realm of the Dwarves in Middle-earth, the kingdom of Durin the Deathless, the deep halls of our fathers, the place where stone sang beneath hammer and chisel, where mithril gleamed in hidden veins, where craft, pride, labor and song were joined beneath the Misty Mountains. If you would know Khazad-dûm, do not begin with darkness. Do not begin with the Balrog, nor with the tomb of Balin, nor with the fear that later men named Moria. Begin with wonder. Begin with Durin, standing beside the still waters of Khazad-dûm, looking into the lake and seeing the stars reflected like a crown above his head. Begin with the first halls cut into living rock, with the sound of hammers ringing in the deep, with doors wrought in friendship, and with a people who believed that beneath the mountains they had found not a prison, but a home. There are names that carry wounds. Moria is such a name. In the tongues of later days, it meant the Black Pit, and by the time many in the West spoke it, they spoke not of splendor, but of loss. Yet names given in fear are not always the truest names. The truest name was Khazad-dûm, and among the Dwarves, that name was not spoken lightly. It meant halls, lineage, memory, wealth, labor, and the long endurance of Durin's folk beneath the mountains. Khazad-dûm lay beneath the Misty Mountains, vast beyond the imagining of most who never walked its roads. It was not a mine only, nor merely a fortress buried in stone. It was a kingdom, deep and wide, with halls upon halls, stairs descending into shadow and rising towards light, chambers carved with skill beyond the hands of younger peoples, forges bright with hidden fire, and roads that passed through the very bones of the earth. Men who saw only its ruins in later ages could scarcely understand what it had been. Even I, who entered it in sorrow, felt the greatness beneath the grief. The story of Khazad-dûm is the story of my people at their highest and at their most wounded. It is a tale of craft and friendship, of wealth and peril, of pride rightly earned and pride taken too far. It is the story of Mithril, most precious of metals, fair as moonlight and stronger than tempered steel. It is the story of friendship between dwarves and elves, a rare and beautiful thing in the elder days, when the smiths of Eregion and the craftsmen of Khazad-dûm worked near one another in respect. It is also the story of doors closing, shadows deepening, and a fire awakening in the roots of the world. But I would not have you think this tale only tragic. Dwarves do not remember merely to mourn. We remember to honor. The halls may fall silent, yet the hands that shape them are not forgotten. The lamps may go dark, yet the craft remains worthy of praise. A kingdom may be lost beneath the mountain, and still its name may stand like carved stone against the wearing of time. So listen now to the history of Khazad-dûm. Listen to the tale of Durin, of the halls under the mountains, of Mithril and friendship, of ruin and return, of Balin's hope, of the Fellowship's passage, and of the lesson hidden beneath stone and shadow. For even in the deepest dark, the memory of a people may endure. And while Durin's name is remembered, Khazad-dûm is not wholly lost. To speak of Khazad-dûm, one must first speak of Durin. Among my people, his name is older than many kingdoms of men, older than the golden halls of Rohan, older than the white towers of Gondor, older even than much that later peoples believed ancient beyond measure. Durin was one of the 7 fathers of the Dwarves, first of our line, the eldest of the house that would bear his name. We call him Durin the Deathless, not because he did not die, as all in this world must pass in their appointed way, but because in him our people saw a greatness that returned in memory, in lineage, and, as some among us believed, in later heirs who bore his name and likeness. The dwarves were made by Aule, the great smith of the Valar, before the coming of the children of Ilúvatar. That is a deep matter, and not one to speak of lightly. We were fashioned in longing, in craft, in the desire to make, to shape, to teach, and to bring strength into the world. Yet, because the time of awakening had not yet come, Aule was made to wait, and we slept beneath stone until the proper hour. This, perhaps, is why stone is not dead to us, as others might think. We came from patience beneath the earth. We were born into endurance. Durin awoke alone, or so the ancient tales say, at Mount Gundabad in the north of the Misty Mountains, a place holy in the memory of Durin's folk. From there he wandered southward through the long ranges of stone, beneath peaks and over lands still young in the telling of the world. At last he came to the valley of Azanul-Bizar, and there he found the lake called Kheled-Zaram, the Mirror Mere. It is said he looked into its dark and still waters and saw stars reflected above his head like a crown, though he stood beneath the open sky. He took this as a sign, and there, beside mountain, valley, and lake, the destiny of our people began to take shape. Near that place rose the 3 great peaks that would forever stand in the memory of Khazad-dûm: Barazinbar, Zirak-Zigil, and Bundu Shatur, which others later named Caradhras, Calebdil, and Fanuidor. To many they were mountains. To us they were guardians, witnesses, roots of the world rising into the sky. Beneath them, Durin founded his halls, and from that beginning grew the greatest mansion ever made by dwarven hands in Middle-earth. Try to imagine those first days, before the vastness that later ages knew. No endless halls yet, no kingdom spreading through deep roads and mighty chambers. Only the first cutting of stone, the first lamps lit beneath the mountain, the first echo of hammer upon rock. Yet from small beginnings may come works that outlast the pride of kings. Durin and his people did not build quickly. Dwarves do not love haste in matters meant to endure. They listened to the stone, followed its strength, learned its seams and hidden paths, and carved not as destroyers, but as craftsmen, revealing what the mountain might become. This is difficult for some other peoples to understand. They think we merely dig. They see mines
and imagine hunger for wealth alone. But the truest dwarven craft is a conversation with stone. A good mason does not force every desire upon the rock. He studies it. He respects its weight, grain, resistance, and hidden beauty. Khazad-dûm became great because it was not carved against the mountain, but with it. Its halls belonged beneath the Misty Mountains, as roots belong beneath an ancient tree. Durin ruled long, and his people multiplied. The halls widened, the roads deepened, and the kingdom beneath the mountains became not merely a dwelling, but a centre of dwarven life and memory. From Durin came the Longbeards, my own people, proud, stubborn, enduring, and not easily turned from oath or labour.
We were not made for open fields like men, nor for forests and starlight like elves. Our greatness lay beneath the earth, in the hidden places where firelight catches upon carved pillars and the sound of song returns from vaults of stone. There is a holiness in beginnings. Later ages remember splendor, wealth, and war. But before all these came recognition. Durin looking into the mirror and understanding that he had found the place appointed for him. I have stood by that lake myself, and even in days of sorrow, when Khazad-dûm had long been darkened, the water still held its mystery. Some places do not forget. J.R.R. did not forget Durin, and no true son of his house can look upon those waters without feeling the weight of ages. From Durin's first halls would rise a realm unlike any other. Not a city beneath a hill, but a world beneath mountains. Not a refuge only, but a kingdom of craft, memory, and deep. Its story would stretch through ages of glory, friendship, isolation, greed, terror, and longing. Yet all of it began with one figure beside still water, beneath stars seen in the depths, hearing perhaps in his heart the first echo of a kingdom not yet carved. So when later peoples speak of Moria as ruin, I think first of Durin. I think of the first lamp in the deep, the first chisel against stone, the first song returning from the walls. Before darkness came, there was wonder. Before fear, there was founding. Before the black pit, there was Khazad-dûm. And before Khazad-dûm, in its greatness, there was Durin the Deathless, father of our line, whose memory still stands like a pillar no shadow can hold. From the first dwelling of Durin grew a realm that few outside our people have ever truly understood. Khazad-dûm was not merely a mine, though mines it had in plenty, nor only a stronghold hidden from enemies, though its gates and deeps were stronger than many fortresses of the world above. It was a kingdom beneath the Misty Mountains, vast, ordered, and alive. Its roads ran through stone as rivers run through valleys. Its chambers opened one beyond another like the memories of ages. Its stairways rose and descended through darkness, firelight, and echo, joining halls so deep and high that even a proud elf might have fallen silent beneath their vaults. The making of those halls was labour beyond the reckoning of men. Dwarves measure time differently when stone is concerned. A wall shaped to endure 1,000 years is not rushed. A pillar carved to bear mountain weight is not treated as ornament only. Every arch, every passage, every bridge and chamber had to answer to strength before beauty. Yet among my people,
Strength and beauty were never enemies. A thing truly well made should endure, and in enduring, it becomes beautiful. So Khazad-dûm grew, not as a city spread beneath the sky, but as a deep and patient work of craft, generation after generation, adding to what Durin had begun. There were halls of gathering, where lords of Durin's folk sat in council beneath ceilings lost in shadow. There were forges, where the heat of hidden fires reddened the stone and made the air tremble. There were armories, storehouses, workshops, roads for merchants, chambers for families, places of song, and solemn tombs where the fathers of our houses rested.
To those who imagine dwarven life as only hammering and mining, I would say, you have never heard a deep hall filled with voices after labor is done, nor seen lanterns reflected in polished stone, nor watched craftsmen pause together in silence before a finished work worthy of remembrance. The scale of Khazad-dûm was part of its majesty. In the world above, men build upward, raising towers to challenge the sky. Elves often build with grace, joining their dwellings to forest, water, and starlight. But dwarves build inward, downward, through the living bones of the earth. We do not fear depth as others do. Depth is memory. Depth is strength. Depth is where the secret things of the world lie waiting to be found by hands patient enough to earn them. Beneath Barazinbar, Ziraxigil and Bundu Shatur, our people made a realm whose greatness could not be measured by looking from afar. One had to enter it, walk it, hear it answer with echoes, and feel the mountains surrounding all things. The halls were lit not by the sun, yet they were not lifeless or blind. Lamps burned along roads and stairways. Forge fire glowed in red and gold. In places where shafts rose towards the upper world, pale light entered and struck stone in sudden splendor. Water ran through hidden channels, falling in distant places with a sound like low music. There were wells, cisterns, carved basins, and deep reservoirs known to those who kept the life of the kingdom moving. A realm beneath the mountain must be wiser than one above it, for every breath, flame, road, and store must be considered. Khazad-dûm endured because it was not merely grand, it was carefully made. And there was song. Never forget that. The halls of the dwarves were not silent before they became Moria. Our songs were deep, slow, and strong, made for stone to carry. A song sung beneath a mountain does not vanish into open air. It returns. It gathers weight. It comes back from far walls, as though ancestors themselves had joined the chorus. Many times I have wondered what it must have been like in Khazad-dûm at the height of its glory, when thousands of voices could fill the halls of Durin, and the mountain itself seemed to remember the tune. Trade passed through the kingdom as well, for Khazad-dûm was not wholly cut off in its early greatness. Its gates opened east and west, and roads led to lands beyond the mountains. Goods came and went. Metalwork, jewels, tools, weapons, armor, carved stone, crafted things of such skill that even proud peoples desired them. But dwarves do not trade only to grow rich. Wealth is useful, yes, and let no one pretend otherwise. Yet the true pride lies in workmanship. A thing made poorly shames the maker. A thing made well carries his honor beyond his lifetime. As the kingdom expanded, so did the memory of Durin. His name was not merely royal ancestry,
It was the foundation of identity.
To be of Durin's folk was to belong to a story older than the walls around us. The kings who came after him ruled not as men who had invented greatness, but as heirs entrusted with it. That is a heavy burden. Many peoples forget their founders when splendor grows around them. Dwarves do not forget so easily. Every deep hall, every carved pillar, every road under the mountain seemed to say again, Durin began this, and we must be worthy of it. Yet no greatness in Middle-earth exists without peril. The deeper Khazad-dûm grew, the more it touched the hidden riches of the earth. And among those riches, one would change the fate of the kingdom more than any other. It was fairer than silver, stronger than steel, light as moonlit water in the hand, and precious beyond the wealth of many kings. Others would come to call it Mithril. To us, it was treasure, craft, blessing, and danger, all at once. For the same mountain that gave us halls, strength, and shelter also held secrets that could awaken desire beyond wisdom. Before speaking of ruin, however, one must first speak of splendor. Mithril did not bring darkness at once. For long ages, it brought wonder, prosperity, and renown. It made Khazad-dûm famous beyond the mountains and drew the eyes of many peoples towards the realm of Durin. And so, the next part of the tale must turn to that shining metal in the deep, the silver treasure that made our kingdom rich, honored, envied, and in the end, perilously hungry for what lay still further below. Of all the treasures ever found beneath the mountains of Middle-earth, none was more wondrous than Mithril. Others have called it true silver, Moria silver, a metal beyond price, light as silk and harder than tempered steel. To my people, it was more than wealth. It was proof that the deep places of the world still held mysteries worthy of awe, and that Durin's kingdom had been founded above a gift unlike any other known among dwarves, elves, or men. Mithril was beautiful in a way few metals are beautiful. Gold is warm, and men have often hungered for it. Silver is pale and fair. Iron is useful, stern, and honest. But Mithril seemed to carry something of moonlight within itself. When polished, it shone with a soft radiance, neither gaudy nor dull. And when worked by master hands, it could become armor, mail, ornament, blade work, inlay, or delicate craft of extraordinary strength. A coat of mithril rings might weigh little upon the body, and yet turn aside blows that would pierce lesser mail. Such a thing was not merely costly, it was almost miraculous. The discovery of mithril made Khazad-dûm renowned far beyond the Misty Mountains. Traders, smiths, and lords from many lands knew of its worth, though few ever possessed it in any quantity. Its rarity made it precious, but its qualities made it legendary. Even in later ages, when the kingdom had fallen into darkness and its halls were feared, mithril remained one of the reasons the name of Moria still stirred the imagination of the world. Men may fear a ruin, yet still desire what lies beneath it. For the dwarves of Durin's folk, mithril became both blessing and burden. With it, our smiths made works that no other people could easily rival. The wealth of Khazad-dûm increased, its halls grew richer, its fame widened, and its craftsmen gained honor even among those who did not always love dwarves. It strengthened trade, deepened pride, and gave the kingdom a splendor that seemed to match the greatness of its halls. Yet all precious things test the hearts of those who possess them. That is not because the thing itself is evil, but because desire awakens around it. I would not have anyone believe the dwarves fell because they loved beauty in stone and metal. That would be too simple and untrue. Craft is not greed. Labor is not greed. To uncover hidden treasure through skill and endurance is not greed. Aule made us with love for the substances of the earth, and in that love there is dignity. But any good gift may become perilous when the hunger for more begins to command wisdom rather than serve it. In the height of Khazad-dûm's prosperity, the mines stretched deeper and deeper. Tunnels followed veins through the mountain. Shafts descended into regions where the air grew heavy and old. The work was hard, dangerous, disciplined, and magnificent. Generations of miners learned the language of the stone, the warning signs of weakness, the sound of stress in a wall, the breath of hidden chambers, the moods of the mountain itself. To mine well is no crude act. It is a science, an art, and a trial of patience. Mithril changed the life of the kingdom, not only through wealth, but through possibility. It allowed works of astonishing refinement. It strengthened armories, enriched royal treasuries, and made Khazad-dûm a center of desire and respect. Its beauty was woven into gifts and alliances. Its value was known even among the elves, who, for all their differences from us, understood excellence when they saw it.
And in those days, before bitterness widened too far between our peoples, Mithril helped form one of the most remarkable friendships in the history of Middle-earth. For west of the mountains lay Eregion, the realm of the elven smiths, where Celebrimbor and his people worked with a skill inherited from the greatest traditions of the Noldor. Between Eregion and Khazad-dûm, there grew a rare closeness, born not of sameness, but of shared reverence for craft. Elves and dwarves do not easily understand one another, yet in the shaping of beautiful things, there can be a bridge stronger than many words. The smiths of Eregion desired Mithril, and the craftsmen of Khazad-dûm found in them minds capable of appreciating its worth. This was one of the golden periods of Durin's realm. The western doors of Khazad-dûm were made in friendship, wrought by Navi the dwarf, and inscribed by Celebrimbor of Eregion. Think on that for a moment. A door into the greatest dwarven kingdom, marked not only by dwarven craft, but by elven letters, opening by a word of friendship.
In later days, when mistrust had grown between many peoples, such a thing seemed almost impossible. Yet it was real. For a time, the mountain and the elven land beside it shared more than trade. They shared trust. Mithril stood at the heart of much of this splendor. It made Khazad-dûm wealthy, but wealth alone did not make it great. Its greatness lay in what the dwarves did with what they found. Raw treasure is only Earth's secret. Craft gives it voice. In the hands of Durin's folk, Mithril became mail, ornament, wonder, and memory. Works made from it passed into legends, sometimes outlasting the kingdoms that had first desired them. Yet even as I speak of splendor, I cannot wholly separate it from the shadow to come. For Mithril lay deep, and the richest veins drew our people further downward. What begins as honest labor may become relentless pursuit.
What begins as gift may become obsession.
The halls widened, the mines deepened, and the kingdom grew accustomed to the glory brought from below. It is not easy for a people to step back from the source of its greatness, especially when every new vein seems to promise still more wonders. That, perhaps, is the sorrow of Mithril. It was not wicked. It was beautiful. It was useful. It was a marvel of the world. But it lay close to darkness older than our kingdom. And in seeking the treasure of the deep, we came nearer to a terror that had slept since ancient days. The tragedy of Khazad-dûm is not that dwarves loved Mithril, but that love of it drew them beyond the boundaries of wisdom. Still, before the darkness woke, there was a long age when Mithril shone as blessing. Let that not be forgotten. The true silver of Khazad-dûm clothed heroes, enriched craft, strengthened friendship, and made the halls of Durin renowned from the mountains to the western lands.
It was the moonlight of the deep earth, and for many years it seemed that Durin's folk had found a treasure worthy of their greatest labours. But treasures, like kingdoms, carry tests hidden within them, and the next part of the tale must turn to the friendship that Mithril helped nourish, the rare and luminous bond between the dwarves of Khazad-dûm and the elven smiths of Eregion. There was a time, difficult as it may seem to those who know only the later distrust between elves and dwarves, when the western gate of Khazad-dûm opened not to suspicion, but to friendship. Beyond the Misty Mountains, in the land of Eregion, the elven smiths of the Noldor made their realm, and among them worked craftsmen of extraordinary skill. They were not as the Sindar of the forests, nor like the Sylvan elves, who loved green leaves and hidden streams. These were makers, jewelsmiths, lore masters of metal and craft, heirs in spirit to the great traditions of the Noldor. Because of that, they understood something of us that many others did not. Craft recognizes craft. That is a truth older than quarrels. A dwarf may look upon fine elven work and see patience, precision, and beauty of mind, even if the hand that made it is not of his people. And an elf of Eregion, seeing the deep work of Khazad-dûm, the carved roads, the polished chambers, the strength of pillars bearing mountain weight, would not deny the greatness of Durin's folk. We were different, yes, profoundly so. But difference need not always become enmity. Sometimes it becomes admiration. At the heart of Eregion stood Celebrimbor, greatest of its smiths, descended from Feanor, whose name is both glorious and grievous in the histories of the world. Celebrimbor inherited a mighty tradition of craft, though he sought, perhaps, a different path from the ruinous pride of his house. In those days, before Sauron's deceit was fully revealed, Eregion was a place of beauty, skill, and restless making. The elven smiths desired knowledge, refinement, and the shaping of works that might preserve beauty against the weariness of time. In this desire, dangerous though it later became, they were not wholly unlike us. Between Eregion and Khazad-dûm, there grew trade, respect, and rare cooperation. Mithril passed westward, and elven craft passed eastward in friendship and exchange. Our people had wealth from the deep places of the mountains, while the Elves of Eregion possessed subtle arts and a vision of beauty shaped by long memory. Together for a time, they made works that neither people would have made in quite the same way alone. Such moments are precious in the history of Middle-earth, for they show what may happen when proud peoples meet not in rivalry, but in shared reverence for what is well made. The greatest symbol of that friendship
was the west gate of Khazad-dûm, the doors of Durin. They were made by Narvi, one of our own master craftsmen, and their signs were drawn by Celebrimbor.
Upon them were set emblems in Ithildin, visible only under moonlight and starlight,
showing the hammer and anvil, the crown and stars, and the trees of the high elves. Their inscription did not speak in threat. It did not warn strangers away with curses. It said, in essence, "Speak, friend, and enter." There is more wonder in that than many realize. A dwarven door made to open by friendship, marked by elven letters, standing between mountain and elven land. This was not merely architecture. It was trust carved into stone. I saw those doors myself in later days, when the friendship they represented had long faded into memory, and the halls beyond had fallen into darkness. Even then, in the moonlight, their beauty could still speak. There are works whose meaning survives the ruin of the age that made them. The doors of Durin were such a work. When they opened before us, it was as though some small remnant of that older friendship stirred again, briefly, before we entered grief.
It is easy, after all that came later, to forget that such friendship truly existed. Elves and dwarves have wounded one another in tale and history, through pride, greed, misunderstanding, and the long memory of old wrongs. Yet the bond between Khazad-dûm and Eregion was not a small thing. It was one of the fairest alliances between our peoples, and perhaps one of the most tragic, because its beauty stood so close to the shadow that would soon fall upon the Second Age. For while dwarves and elves worked in craft and friendship, Sauron was moving behind fair appearance. In those days, he came among the elven smiths under a pleasing form, offering knowledge and guidance. He did not come as the Dark Lord men later feared. Evil rarely begins by showing its true face. It comes clothed in wisdom, generosity, and promise. The elven smiths of Eregion, eager for skill and preservation, listened where they should have been more wary.
Celebrimbor, though not without nobility, lived in an age when craft itself became a field of peril. Khazad-dûm was not deceived in the same manner, yet no realm near such events could remain untouched by them. Eregion's fate and ours were bound by geography, trade, and friendship. When Sauron's designs were revealed and war came against the elves, the peace of that region was shattered. The land west of our gates, once filled with craft and exchange, became a battlefield of terrible consequence. The friendship between Narvi and Celebrimbor, between the dwarves of Durin and the elves of Eregion, was caught within a storm far greater than either people had sought. In that war, the dwarves of Khazad-dûm aided as they could, and our gates became a matter of survival. But even strength has limits when the shadow gathers in full. Eregion was destroyed, Celebrimbor was slain, and the elven smiths were scattered.
The fall of that realm was a grievous blow, not only to the elves, but to us as well. A neighbour had fallen, a friend had been lost, and beyond the western doors, where once there had been trust and craft, there was now danger. After that, Khazad-dûm closed itself more tightly than before. This was wisdom, perhaps, and necessity. Yet it was also the beginning of a longer isolation. A door may close to keep out enemies, but when closed for long ages, it also keeps out friendship, memory, and the healing that comes from shared life. Our people survived the war, but the world around us changed. The great days of open friendship with Eregion were gone, and though their works remained, the living bond had been broken. Still, I would have that friendship remembered.
Not only the wars, not only the mistrust, not only the later darkness beneath the mountains. Remember Narvi and Celebrimbor. Remember the doors of Durin shining under starlight.
Remember that there was a time when elven script and dwarven craft met without bitterness. In a world so often divided by pride, that memory is precious. It teaches that even peoples very different in nature may honor one another when they meet in humility before beauty and skill. And perhaps that is why the loss of Eregion weighs so heavily in the story of Khazad-dûm. It was not merely the fall of an elven realm. It was the ending of an age in which the mansion of the Dwarves stood not alone in the mountains, but in friendship with a fair land beyond its gates. After Eregion fell, Khazad-dûm endured, as Dwarves endure. Its halls remained mighty, its wealth still great, its people unbroken. Yet something of the world had narrowed. The doors still stood, but the age that made them had passed. The friendship between Khazad-dûm and Eregion belonged to one of the fairest hours between elves and dwarves. But fair hours in Middle-earth have often stood close to peril. While the smiths of Eregion laboured in beauty and skill, Sauron was weaving designs far greater and darker than many perceived. He did not come first with armies, nor with flame, nor with open thread. He came as a giver of knowledge, a fair-seeming counsellor, one who appeared to honour craft and preservation. That is often the way of evil when it seeks entry into noble places. It does not ask to destroy at once. It offers improvement. The elven smiths of Eregion, hungry for knowledge and eager to preserve beauty against the decay of time, were drawn into works whose full danger they did not yet understand.
Celebrimbor and his people were not fools, but even wisdom may be tested by desire for mastery. The making of the Rings of Power belongs more properly to the history of the Elves and of Sauron. Yet its consequences reached the very doors of Khazad-dûm. No realm near Eregion could remain untouched once the Dark Lord's deception was revealed. When Sauron openly made war upon Eregion, the land west of our gates was thrown into fire. What had been a place of craft, trade, and friendship became a field of ruin. The elven smiths were overwhelmed. Celebrimbor was slain, and one of the brightest realms of the Second Age was broken. To the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, this was no distant sorrow. Eregion had been our neighbour, our partner in craft, and perhaps the closest friend our people ever had among the elves. Its fall darkened the world outside our western doors. Durin's folk did not simply watch and do nothing.
The dwarves of Khazad-dûm gave aid to the elves in that desperate time, and their strength helped some survive who might otherwise have been destroyed. Yet even the might of our halls could not save Eregion from the full malice of Sauron once his war had begun. There are moments when courage may preserve a remnant, but cannot prevent the fall of what is loved. Such was that hour. Afterwards, the Great West Gate became not a symbol of open friendship, but a boundary against a world grown more dangerous. Khazad-dûm closed its doors. The realm withdrew into itself, as dwarves often do when the outer world becomes treacherous. To some, this may seem cold, but one must understand the mind of a mountain kingdom. We had survived because our holds were strong, because we guarded our roads, because we did not place the life of Durin's folk at the mercy of every storm passing outside. Closing the doors was an act of survival, yet survival often has a cost. When gates close, enemies may be kept out, but so too may friendship fade. The roads of exchange grew quieter. The living bond with Eregion was gone. And though the doors of Durin remained beautiful beneath moon and starlight, they no longer opened into the same world of trust that had shaped them. A door may survive the age that made it, but it cannot by itself restore that age. Within Khazad-dûm, the kingdom endured. This must be said clearly. The fall of Eregion did not bring the fall of Durin's realm. The halls beneath the Misty Mountains remained mighty, wealthy, and deeply rooted. The Dwarves continued their works, their mining, their smithcraft, their memory, their songs. Stone endured where lands above changed hands and burned beneath war. In this, Khazad-dûm showed the strength of dwarven design. It could outlast storms that destroyed realms beneath the open sky. But isolation changes a people. Slowly, quietly, without announcing itself. A kingdom turned inward may preserve much, but it may also begin to hear too few voices beyond its own. Pride grows more easily when there are fewer friends to temper it. Fear, too, may settle deeper when every gate is barred. I do not say this as judgment against my fathers, for they had cause enough to guard themselves. Yet history teaches that even necessary walls may cast long shadows. The war with Sauron passed into later struggles, alliances, and ages of watchfulness. The great powers of Middle-earth shifted, and Khazad-dûm remained beneath the mountains, no longer as open to the west as it had been in the days of Eregion. Still, its fame endured, for Mithril still came from its depths, and the skill of Durin's folk had not diminished. But the world had changed around us. The golden friendship of Narvi and Celebrimbor had become memory. Eregion lay in ruin. The western lands beyond the gate grew emptier. This chapter of Khazad-dûm is not one of sudden destruction, but of narrowing. The realm survived, yet survival drew it deeper into itself. Its people still possessed wealth, craft, and strength, but less of the living exchange that had once joined mountain and elven land. Perhaps that is one of the quieter tragedies of history. Not every loss is a collapse. Some losses are absences that become normal with time. And so the doors closed, but the hammers continued. The songs still sounded in the deep. The forges still burned. Children of Durin were born beneath stone and learned the names of fathers, kings, and craftsmen. Mithril still gleamed in secret places, and the halls still expanded. Khazad-dûm remained great, perhaps greater in its own mind than ever, because it had endured what others had not. Yet beneath all endurance, there was a hidden danger. The wealth that had made the kingdom famous still lay below, and the desire for it did not lessen. If anything, the deeper isolation of Khazad-dûm made its own treasures seem even more central to its life and pride. The dwarves had closed their doors to the storms of the world above, but no door can be closed against what lies beneath one's own feet. In time, the greatest peril to Khazad-dûm would not come from Eregion, nor from Sauron's armies before the gates, nor from any enemy marching openly across the mountains. It would come from the depths of the mountain itself, from places where even dwarven memory grew uncertain, where the roots of the world held secrets older than Durin. But before that terror woke, the realm still knew long glory. And to understand the weight of what was lost, one must first understand the life of Durin's folk in their greatest halls, before the shadow beneath the mountain stirred. Before Shadow claimed the halls, and later tongues named them Moria, Khazad-dûm knew ages of deep glory. It is important to remember this, for ruined places are often judged by their endings, and that is not justice. A kingdom is more than the manner of its fall. Khazad-dûm was not born dark, nor did its people live as ghosts beneath stone. It was a living realm, proud, disciplined, warm in its own fashion, and filled with the works of countless hands that loved craft more deeply than ease. Life beneath the mountain was not life without beauty. Those who have never known dwarven halls imagine only darkness. But the darkness of the deep is not emptiness when shaped by our people. Lamps burned along carved roads. Firelight glowed from forges. Polished stone caught gold, red and silver from flame and metal. Great pillars rose in rows like forests of rock, and broad chambers rang with voices, footsteps, tools, and song. In the deepest halls, there was weight and solemnity, yes, but also belonging. To a son of Durin, stone overhead is not oppression. It is shelter. It is memory. It is home. The kingdom was ordered by labor, lineage, and craft. Every hand had purpose. Miners, masons, smiths, armorers, jewelers, engineers, traders, keepers of records, singers of old lays, guards at gates and deep roads. All had their place in the life of the realm. Dwarves are often called secretive, and perhaps we are. But secrecy is not emptiness. Behind closed gates, there was richness of custom, kinship, law, apprenticeship, feasting, and remembrance. Children learned early the names of their fathers and the worth of work done properly. A poorly made thing was not merely inconvenient, it was shameful. A well-made thing carried honor. The forges of Khazad-dûm were among the wonders of the world.
There, under mountain roof and steady heat, the smiths of Durin's folk shaped iron, steel, gold, silver, and mithril, with knowledge gathered over long generations. The rhythm of hammer on anvil is music to a dwarf. Not because it is gentle, but because it is purposeful. Each blow means form emerging from resistance. Each spark is a small star born from labor. In such places, skill passed from master to apprentice as inheritance no less precious than treasure. Gold can be spent. Craft, if guarded well, can endure through ages. There were songs, too, deeper than many surface folk might expect. Dwarven songs do not always rise lightly into the air. They descend, they gather, they return from stone with strength added to them. Some were songs of making, some of mourning, some of kings, some of lost homes, even before later losses came. For dwarves remember forward and backward alike. We honor what was made before us, and we think of what will remain after our hands are dust.
In Khazad-dûm, a song could travel through a hall and seem to awaken the mountain itself. The kings of Durin's line ruled from halls worthy of their ancestry, but their greatness rested not only in crown or throne. Among dwarves, a king must be guardian of memory and wealth, yes, but also of craft, law, and endurance. He must think in ages, not days. Stone teaches such thinking. A decision made beneath a mountain may shape generations long after the maker is gone. This is why Dwarven counsel can seem slow to others. We are not fond of haste where foundations are concerned. And the realm was not isolated from all the world, even after the doors were more carefully guarded. Trade continued in varying measure across ages, and the works of Khazad-dûm were valued wherever they were known. Weapons, armor, tools, ornaments, carved stone and rare metals passed beyond the mountains, carrying with them the name of Durin's folk. A dwarven-made blade or mail shirt was not merely an object.
It was a promise that the Maker's honor stood behind it. Such reputation is not built in one lifetime. It is carved slowly, like a hall from living rock. Yet wealth was never far from danger. Mithril remained the pride and peril of the kingdom. Its beauty brought renown, and its rarity made it precious beyond ordinary measure. As long as wisdom governed desire, Mithril was blessing. But a people that has built much upon a treasure may find it difficult to turn away when the treasure grows harder to reach. The richest veins lay deep, and the deep called with a voice that was not evil in itself, but dangerous when answered without restraint. Still, I would not have the long glory of Khazad-dûm remembered only as the prelude to folly. That would be too harsh and false to the honor of my people. For many ages, Durin's folk lived nobly beneath the mountains. They preserved knowledge. They shaped wonders.
They held their halls against time, war, and the changing fortunes of the world above. Theirs was not a brief splendor, but a long endurance. And endurance, among dwarves, is almost a sacred word. There is a deep dignity in a people who build for descendants they will never meet. Every stair cut true, every arch set firm, every hall widened, every channel of water guided, every pillar shaped to bear weight. All of it says, we were here, and we cared that those after us might stand securely. That, more than treasure, was the greatness of Khazad-dûm. It was a kingdom made not for passing display, but for continuity. Perhaps that is why its fall wounds us so deeply. Not because we lost gold, nor even Mithril, though those losses were great. We lost a home shaped by ages of love and labor. We lost halls where names had been spoken for generations. We lost tombs, records, works, songs in their proper echo, roads known by heart, and chambers where the footsteps of fathers seemed still to linger. Outsiders call such things ruins. We call them grief. But grief belongs later in the tale. For now, remember Khazad-dûm in its strength. The lamps burning, the forges alive, the bridges spanning black depths with flawless craft, the halls full of voices, the mirror still beneath the stars outside, and Durin's name spoken with reverence in the deep. Before the terror woke, before the drums in the dark, before the bridge became a place of dread, there was a kingdom beneath the mountain, whose glory was earned by labor and guarded by memory. Yet even the greatest halls cast shadows in their lowest places. The dwarves delved deeper, following Mithril through stone older than any king. They knew the mountain well, but not all things buried beneath the world are meant to be disturbed. There are depths where memory fails, where ancient fire may sleep beneath cold rock, and where the works of one age touch the hidden wounds of another. In time, Durin's folk would go too deep, and there, far below the splendor of their own making, they would awaken what should have remained forgotten. There is a phrase often spoken of Khazad-dûm, and even now it carries the weight of judgment. The dwarves delved too greedily and too deep. I have heard it said by men, by elves, and even by those who know little of our people beyond rumor. I will not deny that there is truth in it, but I would ask that it be understood with care. For greed is an easy word to place upon the dead, and harder is the work of understanding how a great people, wise in stone and strong in craft, came at last to awaken terror beneath their own halls. The dwarves of Durin's folk had mined the mountains for long ages. They were not reckless children striking blindly at rock. They knew stone as sailors know the sea, as shepherds know the weather, as kings know the burdens of rule. Every tunnel had to be judged, every shaft supported, every chamber measured against the strength of the earth around it.
The deep places were dangerous, yes, but danger was not new to us. Mining has always required courage, discipline, and knowledge. The problem was not that the dwarves entered darkness. We had always lived beside it. The problem was that the promise of Mithril drew them further than wisdom should have allowed. Mithril had become the wonder of Khazad-dûm, and over time, the richest veins were found deeper and deeper beneath the mountain. A people whose wealth, honor, and renown had grown around that treasure did not easily turn away from it. Each new discovery seemed to justify the labor. Each shining seam suggested that still greater wonders lay beyond the next wall of stone. Such temptation does not always feel like corruption while one is inside it. Often it feels like perseverance, duty, even loyalty to the greatness of one's fathers. That is why it is so dangerous. I do not believe my people woke the shadow knowing.
No son of Durin would willingly have loosed such a horror upon his own halls.
But not all disasters require wicked intent. Some are born when good gifts are pursued beyond their proper bounds. The mountain had given us shelter, stone, iron, jewels, and mithril. It had answered our labor for generations. Perhaps, in the greatness of the realm, we came to believe the deep would always yield to us, that no place beneath our own mountains could be truly beyond our mastery. That was pride, though perhaps not pride in the loud manner of kings above the earth. It was the quieter pride of craftsmen who had too long succeeded. Downward the mines went, through stone older than memory. The air grew heavy in the deeps, and the roads behind the miners stretched farther from the living halls above.
There are depths beneath mountains where sound changes, where a hammer stroke seems swallowed rather than answered, where the warmth of forges and lamps feels fragile against the vast cold of the world's foundations.
Dwarves do not fear such places easily, but even courage should listen when the earth grows strange. What lay beneath Khazad-dûm was not born of our delving. It had been there since an older terror, hidden and sleeping after the fall of its first master. A Balrog of Morgoth, one of those ancient spirits of fire and shadow from the elder days, had fled and buried itself deep beneath the roots of the mountains. Long it had slept, far below the knowledge of Durin's folk. We did not create it. We uncovered the path to it. And there is a sorrow in that distinction, for it means the doom of Khazad-dûm was not only punishment, but collision with an ancient evil left over from wars older than our kingdom.
Yet ancient evil, once awakened, does not care by whose hand the stone was broken. It rises, it burns, it destroys. The miners who first disturbed that darkness could not have understood at once the fullness of what they had found. Perhaps there were tremors, strange heat, sounds in places where no sound should be, a sense in the deep that something vast had shifted in sleep. Tales do not preserve every moment clearly, but one can imagine the dread spreading upward through the tunnels, from those who first saw flame where no forge burned, and shadow where no lamp could pierce. Such was the beginning of the end. Not a great army at the gates, not a siege from the world above, not Sauron's hand openly striking the doors, but a terror awakened beneath the very heart of our own kingdom. This is what makes the fall of Khazad-dûm so grievous. Its enemy did not need to break in. The darkness rose from below, from places our own roads had reached.
The halls that had been our pride became the paths by which fear climbed towards us. And still, I would have fairness. Let no one think the dwarves simply collapsed at the first sign of peril. Durin's folk were not weak. They had endured war, isolation, grief, and the long burden of guarding a kingdom under stone. When danger came, they would have fought, sealed passages, mustered guards, sent warnings through the halls, and tried by every craft they knew to contain what had been awakened. But some foes are beyond the measure of ordinary defense. Against orcs, doors may hold. Against armies, bridges may be broken. Against fire and shadow from the elder days, even the might of Khazad-dûm trembles. The tragedy is sharpened by the thought of those upper halls still living, while the deep already carried doom. Somewhere above, forges may still have burned. Songs may still have been sung. Children may still have learned the names of Durin and the lines of their father. Lords may have sat in council, perhaps not yet knowing that far below, the fate of the kingdom had shifted beyond recall. That is often how ruin approaches great realms, not with the courtesy of announcing itself to all, but rising from hidden places while ordinary life continues for a little while longer. When later generations say that the dwarves delved too deep, let them remember the full sorrow of those words. They speak not only of greed, but of greatness pushed past wisdom, of craft meeting ancient malice, of a kingdom undone by what it could not have fully foreseen, and yet perhaps should have feared. They speak of a people who loved the deep and were betrayed by something sleeping in it. They speak of Mithril shining beautifully above a darkness that no treasure could repay. And so the glory of Khazad-dûm entered its final turning. The lamps still burned, but a deeper fire had awakened. The halls still stood, but something older than the halls now moved beneath them. Durin's name was still honored, but soon even a king of that name would face the terror that had risen in the roots of the mountain. The next chapter is the one my people remember with grief beyond words. The coming of Durin's Bane, the death of kings, and the transformation of Khazad-dûm into Moria, the Black Pit.
The terror that woke beneath Khazad-dûm came to be known by a name of sorrow among my people: Durin's Bane. It was not called so lightly. The name carries grief, accusation, memory, and dread together. For it was in the reign of Durin the Sixth that the ancient evil rose from the depths and brought ruin into the greatest kingdom the dwarves had ever made. To others, it may be remembered chiefly as a Balrog, a demon of fire and shadow from the elder wars of Morgoth. To Durin's folk, it was the doom that climbed from beneath our own halls and struck at the heart of our line. When the Balrog emerged, Khazad-dûm was not an empty ruin waiting to be claimed. It was still a living kingdom, filled with craft, wealth, memory, and people. That is what makes the tale so bitter. The darkness did not rise in a forgotten place where only old stones could be harmed. It rose beneath homes, forges, roads, tombs, and halls where generations had labored. The terror moved through a realm that had names for every road and chamber, where every pillar had been carved by hands now honored among the dead, where every deep place belonged to someone's memory. Durin the heir of the ancient line, faced a horror no king of his house had been meant to face. We do not have every word of that struggle, nor every sight preserved in song, but we know its end. Durin was slain. Think on what that meant to the Dwarves of Khazad-dûm. A king of Durin's name, bearing the weight of the First Father's memory, struck down not by ordinary enemy, not by rival lord, not by army at the gates, but by a nameless terror from the deep. The grief of it must have shaken the halls as deeply as any fall of stone. After Durin's death, his son, Nain I, ruled, but the doom had not passed. The Balrog remained. It did not come as a beast that kills once and is gone. It was a presence, a power of fear and flame, too mighty to be hunted as one hunts an orc chief, or driven out like raiders from a gate. Nain, too, was slain, and with him the last certainty of the realm broke. 2 kings lost in such succession would have been heavy enough in any kingdom. In Khazad-dûm, where lineage, memory, and continuity were sacred, it was a wound almost beyond speech. The halls that had once rung with song began to fill with terror. Roads were abandoned. Doors were sealed. Passages once familiar became dangerous. Deep chambers where miners had worked for generations were left to darkness. The kingdom did not fall in the manner of a city stormed by an army from outside. It withdrew from itself, level by level, all by hall, as fear rose through the roads of its own making. This is perhaps the most sorrowful image in the history of Khazad-dûm. A people forced to abandon not a battlefield, but their home. At last, Durin's folk could remain no.
The mansion of the Dwarves, greatest of all their realms, was forsaken.
Those who survived fled into exile, carrying what they could: tools, records, heirlooms, weapons, memories, names. But no people can carry a kingdom whole upon their backs. Much was left behind: tombs of fathers, works unfinished, treasures buried in sealed chambers, forges gone cold, roads that would know no friendly footfall for long years. The departure from Khazad-dûm was not merely migration, it was amputation. From that time, the old name began to fade from the speech of others, and another name grew in dread: Moria, the Black Pit. I do not love that name, though I understand why it was given. To those who came later, the halls were dark, perilous, and haunted. But to call it only Moria is to remember only the wound, and forget the living body that came before. Beneath that darkness remained Khazad-dûm. Carved pillars,
mighty stairs, bridges over abysses, chambers of kings, and the deep labour of Durin's.
The Black Pit was not born black, it was darkened. After the dwarves departed, other evils entered. Orcs came into the abandoned halls, creeping where craftsmen had once walked, nesting where songs had once returned from stone. The Balrog remained, and beneath its shadow the halls became a place of dread. No longer did the roads under the mountains serve as the proud inner ways of Durin's kingdom. They became passages of fear, watched by enemies, filled with drums in the deep, and whispers of things best left unnamed. Yet memory did not abandon the place. That is important. The dwarves were driven out, but Khazad-dûm did not leave our hearts. A lost home may be more present in memory than a lesser home still held. Among Durin's folk, the longing for those halls endured through generations. Fathers told sons of what had been lost. Songs preserved what eyes no longer saw. The name of Durin remained bound to the mountain, and the Mirror still lay outside, reflecting stars as it had on the day of the first father. The kingdom was lost, but not forgotten. This is why the tale of Durin's Bane is not merely a tale of punishment for delving too deep. It is the story of a people's greatest hope, taken by an ancient evil that should never have walked again beneath the world. It is the story of splendor turned to grief, of craft overwhelmed by terror, of kings slain in their own halls, and of exile beginning beneath stone that had once meant safety. It is also a warning that greatness does not make a realm invulnerable, and that what lies hidden beneath the foundations of the world may be older and more perilous than even the wise suspect. Still, I will say this as a son of Durin. Khazad-dûm was not made lesser because it fell. Its fall was terrible precisely because it had been great. No one mourns deeply what was worthless. We mourn Khazad-dûm because it was beloved, because it was mighty, because it was the work of ages and the heart of our people. The shadow that claimed it could darken its halls, but it could not erase the honor of those who built them. And so the greatest realm of the dwarves passed into darkness. The lamps went out, the gates stood shut, the songs ceased in their proper halls. Orcs and fear took root where Durin's folk had once prospered. The world above learned to dread the name Moria, while my people remembered another name beneath it, older and truer. Khazad-dûm had fallen, but the longing for it endured, and that longing would one day draw dwarves back to its doors. Not once, but again and again, hope would return to the mountain. For dwarves are not easily parted from what was once their own. After the death of Durin VI, after the fall of Nain I, and after the fleeing of Durin's folk from their ancient home, Khazad-dûm entered another age, one that those outside our people would remember far more easily than the splendor that came before it. The kingdom beneath the mountains became Moria, the Black Pit. It is a hard name, and a bitter one. It speaks of darkness, emptiness, fear, and ruin. Yet even that name, dreadful though it is, cannot tell the whole truth. For Moria was not a new place. It was Khazad-dûm wounded, Khazad-dûm abandoned, Khazad-dûm with its lamps extinguished and its songs driven into silence. The halls did not crumble all at once. Stone remembers its makers,
and the work of Durin's folk was not easily undone. The pillars still stood. The stairs still climbed and descended. The bridges still crossed abysses that had once been mastered by dwarven craft.
Great chambers remained, vast enough to humble the heart, though now they lay in shadow. In some places, old carvings may still have caught the faint light of intruders' torches. In others, doors made by vanished hands stood closed upon secrets, tombs, or treasures no living dwarf could read. The kingdom had lost its people, but not its shape. That, perhaps, made the sorrow greater. For an abandoned home is not the same as an empty wilderness. A wilderness belongs to itself. A home remembers those who left. Every silent hall of Moria had once been filled with purpose. Every road had led somewhere known. Every chamber had borne a name, a use, a place in the life of the realm. When orcs later crept into those spaces, they were not entering mere caves. They were trespassing upon memory. They took shelter where craftsmen had labored, gathered where families had lived, and marched through corridors whose stones had once answered to songs of Durin. The orcs did not make Moria great. They infested greatness after it had been wounded. That distinction matters. Evil often lacks the patience to create what it later occupies. It takes, fouls, and breaks what others have built. So it was in Moria. The halls of Durin became dens of enemies. Drums echoed in the deep, no longer as the rhythm of labor or song, but as warning and threat. The sounds of hammers were replaced by harsh cries. The glow of forges became scattered fires, watchful and mean. Where once there had been order, there was fear. And below all, deeper than orc or goblin, deeper than every creeping thing that entered after the dwarves, remained Durin's Bane. The Balrog was the true shadow of Moria. Its presence lay over the halls like a hidden furnace beneath ash. Not always seen, not always named, but felt in the dread of the place. Orcs could dwell there because something more terrible ruled beneath them.
The Black Pit was not merely dark because lamps were gone. It was dark because an ancient spirit of fire and shadow had made the depths its lair. In the world outside, Moria became a name of fear. Travelers avoided it. Wise folk warned against it. Even those who did not know its history understood that the passage under the mountains had become perilous beyond ordinary danger. Yet the old roads still tempted some, for the Misty Mountains were a great barrier, and Moria had once been a mighty way through them. Necessity sometimes drives feet where wisdom would rather not go. For the dwarves, the name Moria carried a pain unlike the fear of strangers. Men might speak of it as a haunted place. Elves might remember the loss of Eregion and the fading of old friendship. But we remembered home. That is why the grief endured so strongly. It is one thing to dread a ruin you never knew. It is another to hear others name your father's halls as a pit of darkness.
Every fearful tale told of Moria had truth in it, yes, but beneath that truth lay another. It had been ours. Exile scattered the heirs of Durin into other strongholds and wanderings. The line survived, for dwarves endured. But survival after such loss is not simple. A people may build new halls, gather new wealth, fight new wars, and still carry within them the shape of what was taken. Khazad-dûm became a wound at the center of dwarven memory.
It was not merely remembered as a past kingdom, but longed for as something unfinished. The thought of return never wholly died. That longing is part of dwarven nature, though perhaps others find it difficult to understand. We do not abandon what was made by our fathers simply because fear has entered it. We may be driven away. We may be delayed for years, for centuries. We may speak with caution and even dread. But beneath caution, the ember remains. Khazad-dûm was the first and greatest mansion of Durin's folk.
No other home could fully replace it.
The mountain still stood. The Miramir still held the stars. Somewhere within the darkness, the works of our people endured, waiting beneath dust, shadow, and the feet of enemies. Yet return was not easy, nor wise in every age. The halls were vast, the orcs many, and the Balrog beyond ordinary strength. Dwarven courage is great, but courage without hope of victory becomes waste. So for long years, Moria remained lost. It became a place of rumours, failed ventures, and grim memories. Those who entered rarely returned, and those who returned did not bring comfort. The darkness held. Still, the Black Pit could not erase the older name. Among Durin's folk, Khazad-dûm remained Khazad-dûm, even when spoken with grief. That is the power of true names. They preserve what fear tries to reduce. Moria described what the halls had become under Shadow, but Khazad-dûm remembered what they were in truth.
A people that keeps the true name of a lost place keeps alive the possibility that darkness is not the final word over it. This is why the history of Moria must be told with sorrow, but not with surrender. Yes, the halls became black. Yes, orcs dwelt there. Yes, Durin's Bane remained, and the sound of drums in the deep became a terror to those who passed through. But the bones of the kingdom were still dwarven. The stones had been shaped by our fathers. The great works still stood beneath defilement. Evil had occupied the house, but it had not built it, and therefore could not wholly claim its meaning. In time, that longing would take flesh in a bold and tragic hope. The son of Durin's people would look upon the old darkness and dream of restoration. He would not be the first to remember Khazad-dûm, but he would be among the most daring to attempt its recovery.
His name was Balin, and to me, he was not a stranger of ancient song, but kin, elder, companion of my father, and a figure of honor. His expedition would bring light briefly back into Moria, and then grief once more.
Among the names bound to the later sorrow of Moria, one is especially dear to me. Balin, son of Fundin. To others, he may be remembered as a lord who attempted what could not be sustained. A dwarf whose hope ended beneath the mountains in darkness and death. But to me, and to many of Durin's folk, Balin was more than a name on a tomb. He was kin to those I loved, a companion of my father Gloin in the quest of Erebor, a dwarf of wisdom, courage, and noble bearing. He had seen exile, dragonfire, wandering, battle, and restoration. He knew what it meant for a lost kingdom to be reclaimed, for he had lived to see the lonely mountain restored after Smaug's fall. Perhaps that memory, bright and dangerous, helped awaken in him the dream of Khazad-dûm. Hope is a powerful thing among dwarves. though we often hide it beneath stern words and iron manners. When Erebor was restored, and the line of Durin had again a mighty home in the east, one might think the longing for Khazad-dûm would have quieted. But old wounds do not vanish because new halls are lit. The lonely mountain was great and dear and worthy of song, but it was not the first mansion of Durin's folk. It was not the place where Durin the Deathless had looked into the mirror mere. It was not the vast kingdom beneath the Misty Mountains where Mithril shone in the deep, and the greatest works of our fathers still lay hidden in shadow. To some hearts, restoration in Erebor may have made the greater restoration seem possible. So Balin went to Moria. He did not go alone, nor as a wanderer chasing foolish rumor. He led an expedition of dwarves who believed, at least for a time, that the ancient halls could be reclaimed. They entered the darkness with courage, weapons, tools, memory, and perhaps songs not heard there for many long years. Imagine that moment if you can. Dwarven feet upon the old roads again. Voices calling through chambers that had known only orc cries and silence. Lamps lit where darkness had settled like dust. For a brief time, Khazad-dûm may have seemed to breathe again. There was success at first. Balin took the title Lord of Moria, and word came out for a while that the colony had found a measure of strength. They occupied parts of the ancient realm, fought enemies, explored chambers, and likely searched for treasures and records of the old kingdom. To reclaim even a small part of Khazad-dûm would have stirred fierce pride in dwarven hearts. Every cleared hall, every sealed door opened, every enemy driven back must have felt like a stone placed in the rebuilding of memory itself. But Moria was vast, and the darkness within it was not dead. The courage of Balin's company was real. Yet courage does not empty every shadow. Orcs remain. Hidden passages remained. The deep places remained perilous, beyond knowing. And beneath all, whether fully understood by Balin's folk or not, Durin's Bane still haunted the roots of the mountain. It may be that Balin's colony never truly grasped the full nature of the terror that had destroyed the kingdom long before. Or perhaps they knew enough and hoped that strength, secrecy, and determination might hold against it. Dwarves are brave, but bravery can sometimes mistake a foothold for a victory. Then messages ceased. Silence came. Among dwarves, silence after hope is a heavy thing. No clear news, no returning messenger, no songs of triumph carried back to Erebor. Only waiting, and then unease, and then the grim understanding that something had gone wrong. For years, many wondered what had become of Balin and those who followed him. My father, Gloin, carried that concern, and I with them. When we later came to Rivendell, part of the burden in our hearts was the unanswered fate of Moria. I entered those halls with the Fellowship, not as one who knew nothing, but as one who feared what he might learn. There are moments in a life when hope and dread walk so closely together that the heart can scarcely tell them apart. I had longed to see Khazad-dûm, even in ruin, for what son of Durin would not? Yet I also knew that Balin had gone there and had not returned. The darkness of Moria was not merely ancient history to me. It was personal. It held the fate of one I honored. And then we found his tomb. In the chamber of Mazarbul, beneath cold stone, lay the words, Balin,
son of Fundin, Lord of Moria. No song can fully hold what such a sight means to a dwarf. There are griefs one expects in war, and griefs one prepares for in old age. But to find a beloved name carved in a tomb within the very halls he had hoped to restore, that is a wound of another kind.
Balin had returned to Khazad-dûm,
Not to plunder, not to boast, but to reclaim memory. And there he had died. The Book of Mazarbul told the end in broken strokes. Attacks, losses, drums in the deep, enemies gathering, doors barred, final defense. Its pages were torn, stained and desperate. Reading it was like hearing the last breaths of a doomed company echo through time. They had fought. They had endured as long as they could. They had not surrendered lightly. But the darkness closed around them, and one by one, their hope was extinguished. The colony of Balin became another sorrow added to the sorrow of Moria. Yet I will not call Balin a fool. Let others do so if they know nothing of longing. He was bold, perhaps too bold, but not without nobility. The attempt to reclaim Khazad-dûm was born from love, pride, and remembrance.
There are dreams too dangerous to pursue, yes. But there are also dreams so deeply bound to a people's heart that one understands why brave souls reach for them, even when the road is shadowed. Balin's expedition failed, but failure does not make courage meaningless. In that tomb chamber, with the Fellowship around me and danger drawing near, the history of Khazad-dûm became more than tale. Durin, Mithril, the old halls, the Balrog, the abandonment, the longing to return, all of it gathered into one stone coffin and one carved name. Balin's death reminded me that Moria was not only ancient ruin. It was a place where hope had recently entered and been broken. The grief was fresh, though the halls were old. And soon we learned that Balin's company was not the only memory still awake in Moria. The enemies that destroyed them were not gone. The drums sounded. The orcs came. The dark passages filled with movement and cries. We had found the tomb of a dwarf lord, but we had also stirred the peril of the Black Pit. The Fellowship would have to pass through the very heart of the Lost Kingdom, carrying with us not only the fate of the ring, but the weight of every shadow that Khazad-dûm had gathered since Durin's Bane first woke alone.
When the Fellowship entered Moria, we did not do so lightly. The mountains above had turned against us, and the road through the Redhorn Pass had become cruel with snow, wind, and danger. Caradhras, or Barazinbar, as my people named it, would not let us pass. So we turned towards the ancient doors beneath the western cliffs. The very doors once made in friendship by Narvi and Celebrimbor. And there, the long memory of Khazad-dûm stood before us in silver lines beneath the moon. I felt then both pride and dread. Pride because no son of Durin could look upon that gate without honouring the hands that shaped it. Dread because beyond it lay darkness, silence, and the unanswered fate of Balin. Those doors had once opened by a word of friendship. There is a strange sorrow in that. A gate made not to repel allies, but to welcome them.
Not to boast of secrecy, but to proclaim trust between dwarves and elves. In a later age, when suspicion had grown and the old alliance of Eregion was long dead, even the riddle of the door seemed almost too simple for us to see. "Speak, friend, and enter." The word was melon, friend in the elven tongue. And when it was spoken, the doors opened, not with the groaning of crude stone, but with the quiet grace of craft, still faithful after ages of abandonment. Inside, Moria swallowed us. The air was still black and heavy. The paths were broken in places, uncertain in others, and the greatness of the halls revealed itself not all at once, but in glimpses. A stair descending, a passage stretching beyond torchlight, a chamber whose roof vanished into darkness, a road wide enough for the traffic of a kingdom. Even in ruin, Khazad-dûm possessed majesty. That is what I remember. Not only fear, not only grief, but majesty.
A lesser work, when abandoned, becomes merely rubble. The halls of Durin, even in shadow, still declare the greatness of their makers. For a time, we moved through darkness with caution, guided by Gandalf's wisdom and by such signs as could be read. There were long hours when the silence itself seemed alive. No birdsong, no wind through grass, no sound of open water beneath the sky. Only our steps, our breathing, the scrape of foot on stone, and far away, perhaps only in thought at first, the sense that the deep places were listening. To those born under the sun, such silence can feel like suffocation. To me, it should have felt more like home. Yet this was not the living darkness of dwarven halls at rest. It was a darkness emptied of its rightful people. Then came the great hall. Pillars rose like the trunks of a stone forest, vast and solemn, line upon line fading into shadow. Even those among us who had no love for dwarven works could not deny what they saw. Boromir, Aragorn, the hobbits, Legolas,
All stood within a wonder of the world. The grief of Moria is that its beauty had to be seen by travellers passing through peril, not by guests welcomed into a living kingdom. In another age, lamps would have burned there, voices would have filled the air. The hall would have shone with the order and pride of Durin's folk. We saw it like mourners entering a roofed tomb. And then, in the chamber of Mazarbul, hope ended. There lay the tomb of Balin, son of Fundin, lord of Moria. I had wondered for years what had become of him. I had feared. I had hoped. But stone gives final answers. His name was carved before me, and no denial remained. Balin, who had journeyed with my father, who had helped reclaim Erebor, who had dared to return to the first mansion of our people, lay dead in the heart of the halls he had sought to restore. My grief in that moment was not only for him.
it was for every return that fails, every song cut short, every home that receives its children only as the dead. The Book of Mazarbul spoke in broken terror. Its pages told of the colony's last days, enemies in the deep, loss of the bridge, watchers at the doors, drums sounding, final words written while doom approached. There is something terrible in reading the end of others while standing where it found them. Their fear was no longer tale. It was around us, in the walls, in the dust, in the silence after the last line. And even as we read, the drums began again. The sound came from the deep. Doom, doom, doom. Not the rhythm of dwarven labor, not the music of hammers, not the ordered beat of craft, but a summons of enemies, a pulse of threat moving through the black roads. Orcs came against us, and with them a cave troll of terrible strength.
The chamber of Mazarbul became a place of battle. Blades flashed, arrows flew, Boromir's horn rang. Aragorn fought with the skill of kings, Legolas with elven precision, and the hobbits showed courage beyond what any enemy would have expected. I fought too, with grief hot in my heart, for Balin, for my people, for the desecrated hall around us. We escaped that chamber, but Moria had fully awakened against us. The pursuit drove us towards the eastern side, towards the bridge of Khazad-dûm. The road became flight, and the darkness behind us filled with cries, feet, drums, and flame. Then came a terror greater than orc host or troll, Durin's Bane itself. I had heard the legends, as all Durin's folk had, but legend is one thing, and presence another. A Balrog is not merely a great enemy. It is ancient malice, given form in shadow and fire, a remnant of the elder days, when powers beyond the strength of ordinary peoples walked in war. When it came, even the boldest among us understood fear. Flame ran upon it. Shadow gathered about it. The air itself seemed to bend beneath its coming. Then Gandalf stood against it. On the bridge of Khazad-dûm, narrow above the abyss, a grey pilgrim revealed a power many had not guessed in him. He was no mere wanderer then, no kindly old counsellor with staff and cloak. He was a servant of the secret fire, standing against a demon of the ancient darkness. I will not forget his words, nor the sight of that confrontation. The bridge broke. The Balrog fell. Yet as it fell, its whip lashed out and dragged Gandalf into the abyss with it. We cried out, but nothing could be done. The darkness took them both, fire and grey light, falling together into depths older than the kingdom itself. And we, the Fellowship, were driven onward, wounded in spirit, unable to remain. So we came out at last from Moria into the Dimrill Dale, beneath the open sky, beside the Mirrormere, where Durin had once looked and seen the crown of stars.
There is no crueler contrast. To leave behind the black halls, the tomb of Balin, the fall of Gandalf, and then stand where the first father of my people had received the sign of his destiny. The beginning and the sorrow stood almost side by side. I looked upon Kheled-Zaram, and my heart was full beyond words. The passage of the Fellowship through Moria did not reclaim Khazad-dûm. It did not heal the halls, nor restore Balin, nor bring back the lapse of Durin's folk. But something changed there. Durin's Bane, the terror that had driven my people from their greatest home, was drawn at last into battle with Gandalf. Their struggle did not end upon the bridge. It continued in fire, water, darkness, and height, until at last the Balrog was cast down upon the mountain. Gandalf returned changed, and the ancient shadow of Moria was destroyed. That does not mean Khazad-dûm was restored in that hour. Ruins do not become homes in a single victory.
Orcs remained for a time. Grief remained. And the work of ages would be required before any true healing could come. But the greatest terror beneath the mountain had fallen. Durin's Bane was no more. For the first time since the days of Durin the Sixth, the deepest doom of Khazad-dûm had been broken. And so the Fellowship's passage through Moria became part of the history of my people. Though our errand was greater even than the halls we crossed. We entered seeking a road, and we found a tomb. We fled enemies, and we witnessed the fall of a wizard. We carried the ring onward, but behind us remained the echo of an older story.
the kingdom beneath the mountains, the grief of Durin's folk, and the hope that perhaps, in some distant age, the name Khazad-dûm might be spoken again, not only in mourning, but in restoration.
The story of Khazad-dûm is not a simple warning against greed, though greed has its place in the tale. Nor is it only a lament for a fallen kingdom, though lament is woven through every hall and shadowed stair. It is a deeper lesson than that, carved in stone, fire, mithril, and memory. It teaches that greatness may be true and still be vulnerable, that craft may be noble and still be tempted, that love for one's inheritance may preserve a people, but may also draw them again and again towards danger when the heart refuses to let go. Many who speak of my people do so with little understanding. They say dwarves love gold, treasure, metal, and stone, as though that alone explained us. But to love what lies beneath the earth is not itself a fault. A farmer loves the soil, a sailor loves the sea, an elf may love the forest and the stars, and a dwarf loves the deep places where the world keeps its hidden bones. We were made with hands eager to shape, with eyes trained to see worth in roughness, with hearts that understand endurance. Khazad-dûm was born from that love. Its halls were not the work of petty greed, but of patience, skill, order, and devotion passed down through generations. Yet every strength casts a shadow when wisdom fails to govern it. The same endurance that makes dwarves faithful can also make us stubborn beyond counsel. The same love of craft that makes us excellent can make us unwilling to leave a work unfinished. The same reverence for treasure rightly earned can become hunger when the treasure begins to rule the heart. Mithril was beautiful, useful, and worthy of wonder. But no treasure is worth the ruin of a people. That is easy to say after the fall, and far harder to see when the lamps are still burning, the halls are still full, and every new vein seems like a blessing. Khazad-dûm teaches that the deepest dangers are not always found outside the gate. Many kingdoms prepare for enemies they can see, armies marching, banners raised, fires on the horizon. Durin's realm had strong gates, mighty doors, guarded roads, and halls built to endure siege and time. Yet its doom rose from below, from within the very world it had mastered. That is a hard lesson. A people may be safe from invasion and still be endangered by what lies beneath its own ambition. A fortress may keep out foes and still fail to guard the heart. It also teaches that beauty does not prevent sorrow. Khazad-dûm was magnificent. Its pillars, bridges, chambers, doors, and works of mithril were among the marvels of Middle-earth. Yet splendor is not the same as safety. There is no craft so fine that it can excuse folly, no hall so mighty that it cannot be emptied, no treasure so bright that it can light a path once wisdom has been left behind. This is not said to shame the makers of Khazad-dûm, but to honor the truth of their story. They built greatly, and because they built greatly, their fall speaks greatly too. And still, there is another lesson, one more comforting in the quiet of night. What is made with love is not wholly lost when it falls. The halls of Khazad-dûm were darkened, occupied, defiled, and feared. Yet they remained in memory. They remained in song. They remained in the longing of Durin's folk, in the grief of exiles, in the courage of Balin's attempt, and in the awe of those who later walked through their ruins. Evil may inhabit a place, but it cannot become the author of everything that place has been. The orcs did not make Khazad-dûm. The Balrog did not carve its halls. Darkness may claim a throne for a time, but it cannot erase the hands that shaped the stone before it came. This is why remembrance matters. Without memory, Moria would be only a pit of fear. With memory, it is also Khazad-dûm, Durin's kingdom, Navi's craft, Mithril's wonder, the friendship of Eregion, the songs of the Longbeards, the tomb of Balin, and the place where Gandalf broke the ancient terror that had haunted our people. Memory does not deny darkness. It refuses to let darkness tell the whole tale. For myself, when I think of Khazad-dûm, I do not think only of drums in the deep. I think of the mirror beneath the stars. I think of Durin standing alone and seeing a crown reflected above him. I think of the first lamp lit under stone, the first hall cut true, the first song answered by the mountain. I think of Navi and Celebrimbor making a door that opened by friendship. I think of Balin, whose hope failed, but whose courage I cannot despise.
I think of Gandalf standing upon the bridge, and of the terror of ages falling at last into the abyss. There are ruins that teach despair, and ruins that teach humility. Khazad-dûm teaches both humility and hope. It tells us that pride may awaken what we cannot master, but also that ancient evil can be overthrown. It tells us that homes may be lost, but names may endure. It tells us that no kingdom, however mighty, should mistake wealth for wisdom, and no people, however wounded, should surrender the memory of what they truly are. So if you hear the name Moria, remember the darkness. It would be foolish not to. Remember the orcs, the tomb, the bridge, the abyss, and the fire. But do not stop there. Go further back, as one walks a road through shadow towards an older light. Remember Khazad-dûm. Remember the mansion of the Dwarves, the kingdom beneath the Misty Mountains, the halls of Durin's folk in their glory.
For only when both names are held together, Moria and Khazad-dûm, does the lesson become whole. And perhaps that is the final teaching of the mountain. No life, no people, no kingdom should be judged only by its ruin. The ending matters, but it is not the only truth. Khazad-dûm fell, yes, but before it fell, it shone. It sheltered a people, shaped wonders, forged friendships, guarded memories, and left works so mighty that even darkness could not make them small. That is why my people still speak of it. That is why the name of Durin is not silent. That is why, beneath sorrow, there remains pride. Khazad-dûm fell into darkness, but darkness was not its first truth, nor shall it be the only truth remembered. Long before orcs crept through its chambers, long before the drums sounded in the deep, long before Durin's Bane rose in flame and shadow, there were halls filled with life beneath the Misty Mountains. There were lamps along the roads, forges burning with honest fire, voices lifted in deep song, and craftsmen shaping stone and metal with the patience of a people made for endurance. It began with Durin beside the Mirror, looking into still water and seeing stars like a crown above his head. From that vision grew the greatest mansion of the Dwarves in Middle-earth, a kingdom not raised into the sky, but carved into the bones of the world. Its greatness was not the greatness of conquest alone, nor of wealth alone, though wealth it surely had. Its greatness was the greatness of labor joined to memory.
generation after generation, added to what had come before, not to erase the fathers, but to honour them. The halls remember such things. Stone may be silent, but it is not faithless. Every pillar of Khazad-dûm bore witness to hands that shaped it. Every stair remembered the feet that climbed it. Every chamber once carried voices, names, laughter, counsel, song, sorrow, and oath. Even when lamps went out and enemies entered, the work beneath the mountain remained dwarven. The darkness occupied it, but did not create it. That distinction is the difference between despair and remembrance. And yes, there was folly. We must not pretend otherwise. The dwarves delved too deep, drawn by mithril, by wonder, by desire, and perhaps by pride in their own mastery of the mountain. Wisdom should have drawn a line before the deepest places were opened. Yet tragedy is rarely clean enough to be placed under one word.
The dwarves did not awaken a small evil of their own making, but an ancient terror left from the wars of the elder days. Their fort met a darkness older than their kingdom, and the cost was terrible. Durin the Sixth fell. Nain the First fell. The people fled. Khazad-dûm became Moria, the Black Pit, and for long years the name of the first mansion of Durin's folk was spoken with grief. Yet even exile could not empty the heart of longing. Balin returned with hope, and though his colony failed, his courage showed that the memory of Khazad-dûm still burned. The Fellowship passed through its shadowed halls, and there upon the bridge, Gandalf faced the ancient Bane that had driven my people from their home. The terror fell at last, though at bitter cost. What then remains of Khazad-dûm? Not only ruin, not only warning, not only a tomb beneath the mountain. What remains is memory, and memory is no small thing. A people without memory can be scattered by loss. A people with memory can carry a kingdom inside them, even when its gates are shut. Durin's folk carried Khazad-dûm through exile, through war, through grief, through the fall and restoration of other halls. The name endured because the love endured. So let the story be held whole. Remember the first father and the lake of stars. Remember the deep halls, the mithril, the friendship with Eregion, the doors of Durin shining in moonlight. Remember the closing of the gates, the long glory, the delving, the awakening of fire, the flight into exile, Balin's tomb, the drums in the deep, and the bridge where Shadow met one who would not pass aside. Hold all of it together, and Khazad-dûm becomes more than a fallen kingdom. It becomes a mirror of Middle-earth itself. Beauty and peril, craft and pride, loss and endurance, darkness and a hope that refuses to die. I am Gimli, son of Gloin, and I have spoken of these halls not as a scholar only, but as one whose blood remembers them. To me, Khazad-dûm is sorrow, yes, but also honor. It is grief, but also inheritance. It is a wound, but also a monument. And though its lamps were quenched, the name of Durin still stands. Beneath mountain, beneath shadow, beneath time itself, the halls remember. Now the tale of Khazad-dûm grows quiet. The hammers fade into the distance. The great doors stand silent beneath moon and starlight. The mountain rises above the world, cold and ancient, while deep below, in halls of stone and shadow, Memory rests where no wind can trouble it. We have walked tonight through glory and grief, through Durin's awakening, the making of the halls, the shining of Mithril, the friendship of Eregion, the closing of the gates, the terror of Durin's Bane, the sorrow of Moria, the hope of Balin, and the passage of the Fellowship beneath the mountains. Let the darker parts of the tale drift away now. Let the drums in the deep fall silent. Let the fire and shadow sink into the abyss where they belong. Keep instead the gentler memory, the still waters of Khazad-dûm beneath the stars, the soft glow of lamps along dwarven roads, the red warmth of forges far below the snow, and the deep song of Durin's folk rolling through halls carved with patience and love. Think of stone not as cold, but as shelter. Think of darkness not as fear, but as rest when the lamps are peaceful and the gates are guarded. For even beneath mountains there may be calm. Water moves slowly through hidden channels. Embers breathe softly in old hearts. Far above, snow gathers on the peaks of Barazimbar, Ziraxigil, and Bundu Shathur. But below, the memory of the halls remains warm. Not all silence is emptiness. Some silence is the sleep of ancient things, the pause after long labour, the stillness of stone that has carried many ages and does not need to speak loudly to endure. So rest now beneath the mountain. Lay down the weight of the road, the burden of long journeys, and the sorrow of ruined halls. Let your thoughts wander through the safer chambers of memory, where no enemy walks, where no shadow rises, where the lamps of Khazad-dûm burn again, as they did in the days of its glory. Hear, if you can, the distant echo of a dwarven song, low and steady. Not a song of fear, but of home, craft, kinship, and endurance. The world above may be restless, but stone is patient. The night may be long, but even the deepest dark is not beyond remembrance. And as you drift into sleep, may the halls of Durin become not a place of dread, but a deep and quiet refuge in the mind. Vast, ancient, solemn, and strong. Rest beneath the mountain. Rest beneath the stars reflected in the mirror. Rest where the old names are not forgotten, and where the memory of Khazad-dûm still glows softly in the dark. Before I leave you to the quiet music beneath the mountain, let me thank you for listening to the story of Khazad-dûm. You have walked with me through the memory of my people, through Durin's first vision beside the mirror, through the making of the great halls, through the shining of Mithril, through the friendship of Eregion, through the closing of the doors, through the awakening of Durin's Bane, and through the sorrow of Moria. This was not only the tale of a fallen kingdom, it was the tale of a home carved by patient hands, guarded by proud hearts, and remembered by those who could no longer dwell within it. To others, it may be a place of darkness, drums, and fear. To the children of Durin, it remains something more. An inheritance, a wound, and a promise that the work of our fathers is never truly forgotten. So now, let the heavier shadows of the tale pass from your mind. Let the bridge, the abyss, the drums, and the fire fade into distance. Keep instead the gentler memories, the stars reflected in Khazad-dûm, the glow of lamps upon polished stone, the warmth of old forges, the echo of deep songs beneath the mountain, and the quiet strength of halls made to endure
beyond the lives of those who shape them. I shall leave you now with peaceful music from the memory of Khazad-dûm, with soft echoes in the stone, distant water in hidden channels, and the calm of ancient halls resting beneath the Misty Mountains. Rest well, gather your strength. Even the stoutest heart, the firmest hand, and the bravest traveller must one day lay down the axe, quiet the mind, and sleep. May Durin's star shine gently over your dreams. May the old roads lead you safely through the dark. And when we meet again, perhaps I shall tell you another tale of dwarven halls, lost kingdoms, ancient friendships, or treasures buried deep beneath the earth.
Until the next story, rest beneath the mountain. Let the music carry you softly into the night and sleep in peace.